it is like it's a turning point right now, all right? So now Biden got in office. He's now the president of the United States. They have complete power. Who are they looking at as the enemy? Where do we stand on our civil liberties? Where do we stand on our foreign policy? But the whole question is, when you have all this money and you have all this power and you have all this resources to spew your narrative, who's for real, who's for fake? Because I have a lot of problems with a lot of the people I see online that were talking a lot of this guff is what it is and stuff like this. That, you know, we talked about the white savior complex and whatnot. I think they honestly feel that way emotionally. They've been duped to say that you have to think this way or say this or you have to call this out, you know, unchecked, unresearched. Just get on our team and call these people out. You can't ever talk to them. You shouldn't be talking to the Boogaloo Boys no matter what. You know, we have this kind of culture, and I think it's really people are that way. And I think there are some bad actors that are almost taking the narrative from the establishment. Yeah. Like they're almost like working for them, like the Sam Cedar shit. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Even like, you know, the Jordan Sheridan when he was talking about OAN, Fox News, Newsmax, and some of you on the YouTubes. But, I mean, he's even saying that you shouldn't even talk to these people whatsoever, that the 72 million people, and 90% of them feel the elections had a lot of serious irregularities, and I don't believe in the results, that even to entertain their idea that elections can be messed up, you're a Nazi and you're a white nationalist. Don't even talk to these people.
Yeah, I'm such a white nationalist. Everybody who watches the show
You're a
knows
white nationalist sympathizer.
They know. Like, they've totally uncovered me. So this is my thinking, right? Because there was a lot of controversy with a lot of the things that we were talking. First of all, we the Fred Hampton and then the Boogaloo interview, like, bam, because we're not afraid of talking to people. We're not. We do it. I know other people tread lightly because they don't want to get the backlash, but we fucking do it because we are true to our convictions and we want consistency.
Why is it important to do, though?
Believe me, huh?
Why is it important to do, though? Well, because I want you have a way of words, and why is it important to talk to other people? Being a woman of color, coming from this movement, civil rights activists on the streets, why is it important to talk to the Boogaloo Boys? Or even Niko, what he said today, I don't give a shit if the guy's a KKK person. Go talk to them if you can move them over. Is it important to talk to these people, and why is it important?
I think there's a difference between talking to people and this hyperbolic idea that some of the faux left is espousing that means that you are aligning with them, that you are somehow giving your ideology up and uniting with white supremacists. That's nobody's asking you to unite with white supremacists. Literally, I have not seen one single person say we need to unite with white supremacists. Nobody is saying that. What people are saying is that there is this desire to stay in your echo chamber, to only hear what people like you think, and to not question your own echo chamber, which then you become basically a meta a meta reality, right? This is getting really like Rick and Morty-ish. You become like this microcosm of the liberal party that you so desperately want to fight, and of the Republican Party, because the right does this too. You have to talk to people you disagree with, and I have found that there are some conservatives that are more willing to talk to me than liberals or these rad libs that are willing to talk to somebody that's a conservative, not necessarily a white nationalist or a white supremacist, because there are very few of those people. They exist and they are a threat, but they are very few. And how we defeat those people is to convince some people who are lost to come on our side. I'm not by any means going to be convinced to go rally with a white nationalist and start reciting Mein Kampf on air. Like, I think that's
Chapter
what some
7?
of these people are. Yeah, Chapter 7, Revolution. I think that's what some of these people think, like, that's going on. Nobody's asking you to do any of that shit. So stop being hyperbolic in this. But what I want to get to, Pasta, and you said why it's important. It's important because we need to talk to each other, or we're going to be so hyper-focused on each other, cause a civil war, completely destroy any means of attacking the oligarchy. We're going to disarm ourselves. And I don't want that. I don't want a civil war. I'm not okay with killing people because of their ideology at all. So how some of these liberals, in one fell swoop, they're against the death penalty, but they're also okay with killing fascists, who most people are not fascists.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think why it's important too, fam, as well, is that let's just say, for argument's sake, that a lot of people on the right who watch OAN and Newsmax and whatnot are anti-defund the police. They don't believe that racism exists as much as the left say it is,
Right.
whatnot. And they believe that the criminal system is not racism and the police department on racism. Well, let's say that level of that's where they stand, right? Okay, then they don't have a deep-seated, rooted, come from, like white supremacy, the black person's this, the black. They just feel like that, where a lot of them are on the surface like, okay, I want a wall because I believe that they're taking away from American resources and they're taking American jobs. It's not that I'm like inherently hate these people, but I just think it's this. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
we think differently than them, right? So we convince them to come on our side, that we have a common goal, that we're going to fight the people at top that are really taking away from both of us. And in that process, that white person will be convinced that people are like, wow, they are very.
And that's happened already.
They'll see it happen because now they're marching hand in hand with you, and it's a lot easier for them to see your plight if you get them to come along for a common goal, and then they'll recognize those things. I think sometimes people say you have to recognize these things before we go take battle in arms together against the elites.
That's how it should be, but it's not. Unfortunately, it's not the case. This country, like I said, you have to understand that the system is also to blame for it's nature and nurture. Like it's and in this case in America, it's nurture. I mean, this country not that long ago had separate water fountains for people. Like, let's not pretend that happened. It happened less than 100 years ago, you guys. This is nothing new. And like, I agree. Like, we can't. It's happened already. People have come up to us and said, "Hey, I voted for Trump in 2016, but a lot of what you're saying is making sense. So I'm willing to have those conversations." I've received messages from conservatives wanting me to go on their show from a leftist perspective, because I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not going to say all of a sudden, "Oh, well, I'm not for Medicare for all," because I'm talking to a conservative. That doesn't happen. I mean, people who do that actually sell their ideology to the highest bidder. That's not who I am, and that's not who he is either. That's not like the vast majority of people, of journalists doing this, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, they're not going to change their ideology just because they're going on Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about what they believe and bring out those beliefs to a conservative audience. And I have zero issue talking to somebody that is a conservative, because I've done it before. I did it on RT. Yeah. And having some agreements and disagreements with them, and who knows? Like, one of them, what's his name, said he could sit down and trust me, Lionel. I didn't see the thin blue line flag, because if I had seen that flag, I would have been a little bit more like, and like, but he was like flabbergasted that I even sounded that I was even a leftist, because he was like, wait a minute, you're a leftist, but you're not like getting emotional and calling me like, all these names like every other fucking liberal.
Well, they've also set up those kind of parameters where you have to act that way, or otherwise you're bastardized too, just like the people they're bastardizing. And if we go back and we watch that, and you just have to talk. You have to ask questions. Like when we went to the Trump rally, every guest I spoke to, I said, okay, if racism doesn't exist, and you're saying that there's not as much racism as there was back then, it doesn't even exist nowadays, that's what you're saying as a Trump supporter. And there's people on the left saying racism does exist, and it does exist within our policing department and our criminal justice department. Then how come there are 750,000 black people in jail and 700,000 white people in jail, when white people make up almost half the country and black people make up less than 20%?
Right.
Square that circle for me and explain to you, because honestly, maybe not the way they're saying it on the left, the liberals, by demonizing you, but they do have a point when there is a racist element within our criminal justice system.
Right.
And I've gotten a whole different answers. It's hard for a conservative to answer that, and it makes them think. Now, the answer I just got last time from somebody got back to me, he goes, why we have so many people in jail is because back in the 60s and back in the 70s, they locked up black people for just being black. It's different nowadays. We don't do that anymore. I said, okay, well then let's fix that. Let's commute those sentences right there of those people who were unjustly jailed and are still unjustly jailed in our prison system that are sitting there. If that's what you're saying, let's be a part of fixing that. And he was like, I do that. I'd say so. I'd say there's some people, some men of color that are in jail in the 60s and 70s that did nothing, and they were just jailed for being black. Let's commute their sentences.
And not
so
just commute their sentences and just start making sure this doesn't happen again. And then that's how
the
you
whole.
get
That's
into
another
the conversation.
That's a whole nother. Yeah, that's a whole
but
nother conversation.
Made those inroads, and and that's what you got out of that conversation. So I think today's left would have actually jailed civil rights activists. And this is why I think, because they're so. And I'm talking about people who defended the who were looked as radicals, right? Because there's always, depending on where you are in an era, there's different levels. MLK was far more accepted in history, even up to the point where I was learning about him and Malcolm X and Fred Hampton. I was barely taught anything in school about Fred Hampton.
Yeah,
he was seen as a, and I'm a millennial and you're a Gen X.
Nothing.
And like I was taught that he was a radical, like a crazy communist radical that wanted to like take up arms and kill all the, like, that's what I was freaking taught. It's insane. And
that's what I was taught about the Black Panthers. Yeah.
And then you do the research and you're like, that's not what this was at all. So I have some more news about the YPO boys, because when Pasta on the video said, he said white nationalists, that is what they were. I put white supremacists on the tweet, but I meant white nationalists. Although, to me, Confederate symbols, and we're going to get into this, I guess that depends on what you're defending for a lot of these people, right?
Yeah.
So,
we have to,
not everyone was a racist, right? We went over, not everybody in that affiliation. In fact, most of them were not. The org formed into a huge support of the civil rights movement, but they didn't start out that way. And they talked about the first meeting between the Panthers and the Patriots in 1969. And the meetings didn't always go over smoothly, but a critical juncture came, unsurprisingly, through a confrontation with the repressive arm of the state, the police, one night after Lee left a meeting with the YPO, only to be immediately apprehended by police and herded back into the back of a cop car. Witnessing this egregious instance of profiling and harassment, Fesperman gathered every person he could, and this guy was the YPO, the Young Patriot member, but also their partners and children, and they used their bodies to surround the car and force the police to release Lee, who was the Black Panther, on the spot. These minor battles and acts of solidarity reinforced the mutual respect the two organizations had for each other. After they kept meeting and talking, these groups of white Appalachia men who were working class and lived in hillbilly Harlem, after they talked and got together, that kind of, they built that solidarity through protecting a lot of the Black Panthers.
That's an amazing story.
It's an amazing story, but it also sounds familiar to me as to what something that's happening right now. And people are going to be pissed off about me saying that, but let's go on. Principles of revolutionary solidarity were linked to building an alliance between economically disadvantaged groups. For the Patriots and Panthers, quote, poor people's power was a form of class power. This meant taking matters into their own hands and reinventing tried and true tactics. At the end of the scene, a decision is made for several Uptown residents and Young Patriots to show up to unannounced to an upcoming Model Cities meeting to voice their concerns about how government funds were distributed and how many felt shut out of having any say in how the new anti-poverty programs in Chicago were being managed. And so they started talking to each other. They started working together, and it included several groups, obviously the Latino lords as well. And so one of the things that we know that we heard in that speech that still disturbs people is the following line, however, is one that is quite discordant to our contemporary radical sensibilities. Shows why some were hesitant to immediately ally themselves with the Patriots. Again, there was a lot of pushback from some of the Black Panthers against allying with the Patriots, because they felt that some of them were racist, and they did not like the fact that they carried Confederate flags and
they knew that some of them were
emblem.
racist. Yeah, you can't. They knew some were. I mean, once again, some people are going to have different levels of their racism when it comes to young patriots and stuff like that. Somewhere at the point where like, hey man, well, what I've been taught is wrong, and I'm seeing like these Black Panthers are awesome. And there was some, they're like, oh hell no, I'm not working, with the Black Panthers. And there's a lot of Black Panthers that gave Fred Hampton pushback for doing this too as well.
Exactly. And you're going to tell me that in the 1960s in Chicago that all these people from hillbilly Harlem who are working class, white, and are suffering under economic conditions, none of them are going to be racist? Are you kidding me? They're not going to have racist tendencies. Why? Because it fits nicely, perfectly into your narrative that, oh no, these people wouldn't talk to anybody that they disagreed with. Never. No, that's not what happened.
Talking to the author, by the way, fam, too, just to piggyback on what fam's saying right now, he says they definitely would be considered white supremacist in this day and age by far.
Right, because...
So just that's the author of the article that we talked to, Theodore Rose, said that by plain and simple. Go ahead.
Exactly. So this is what I'm trying to say. So they said, and the thing they had a problem with, white power to the young patriots and all other white revolutionaries. So they said white power, black power, brown power. We saw this. And white power was commonly heard in the speeches by various members of the Illinois Panthers, of course, including Hampton himself. In the specific context, this is how they're explaining it. The white power was simply hillbilly power. The form of revolutionary solidarity that poor whites contributed to the coalition with African Americans and Latinos, and who confronted similar economic political conditions. The overarching political slogan of these groups was all power to the people, with the people working as a binding rather than a divisive one. Okay, so again, if we had somebody today say brown power to brown power, black power, white power to, you would automatically call them a racist. Yeah. If you had somebody today that was a civil rights activist and was a BLM member, and they started saying, white power to white power, and they started bringing in these people with Confederate flag symbols, and these people said, no, we're white working class group of men who literally, we're in solidarity with BLM, we're in solidarity with this, but yeah, we're gonna wear our Confederate flag because it's history. It's not repression. Do you think that would even happen? Because all of these people on the left would be like, oh my God, no, those are Nazis, those are white nationalists. We wouldn't be able to align like they did during that time, because people now are freaking like flat out liberals. They're flat out, they've turned into liberals, and they've turned into completely authoritarian gatekeepers.
Yes, they have.
It's disgusting.
Authoritarians with training wheels. Do you want to go over this part before we go over the question of why we got attacked yesterday? But you want to finish up this? Because I want to talk about why they were attacking us. Like, was it a technicality? Was it a specific message they're trying to get through? We talked about this in the beginning, but let's read this last part.
We said, remember in the video, I said we would get attacked.
Yeah.
By saying this.
Yes.
Like I said that.
But
from the start.
why? Okay, read the rest of this here, and then we'll go over the questions.
A lot of people, of course, and this is what I'm talking about. Some of the approaches induce more anger, specifically their appearance. It's well known that the battle flag of the Confederacy was at first an integral part of the YPO's image, both as a provocation to the other groups on the left and as a mode of popular outreach to other Southerners. The raw shock effect of this usage could be jarring. Photographs from the United Front Against Fascism conference show members of the Panthers security detail standing side by side with members of the Patriots dressed in denim jackets, Confederate flag patches stitched across their backs. As the Patriots would themselves later recognize, this usage of the Southern Cross was a political error and deserving of thorough criticism. Still, the reason behind the adoption of this emblem, a universal symbol of white supremacy, a real material reminder of the tortured history of racial violence and brutal after effects of slavery in the United States, were related an attempt to understand the radicalization of these people. And the Patriots' appropriation of the rebel flag was related to the specific analysis of the Civil War as an intra-elite conflict, a pissing match or clash between feudalistic slave-holding Southern planting class and Northern bourgeoisie industrialist, which then produced the civilizational divide between the North and South. By using the symbolism, they were attempting to scramble the flag's sedimented, accumulated meanings, a taking back of Southern history from below. So the working class white people were using that as a symbol to distinguish themselves as a group against the elitism of the upper industrial, northeasterners who were obviously part of the Union. They were part of the Confederacy, but it's also a symbol of white supremacy. You said it right there. So by default, them wearing that and the Black Panthers working with them, they're working with people who are wearing emblems of white supremacy. You can call them white nationalists. You can pretend that they weren't racist. But by today's definition, you would say that was wrong. By today's definition, you would say that's the excuse Republicans use, because it is. Republicans say, a lot of the people that are pro-Confederate flag and statues say that's our history. That's our legacy. We don't want to remove that. So why was it okay then? And why is that okay in retrospect, looking at history now, then what's going on? Like, what would somebody wearing a Confederate flag, why is that so wrong today? Because back then, the Confederate, the Civil War was much more recent then. So technically, it should have been even more difficult to watch somebody wear those symbols when you have to go to different fountains when you're getting attacked. So why is that now? A lot of white progressives yesterday really telling people of color, Black people specifically,
we
that
saw
like
a couple things.
That like no, you're defending Nazism. This is ludicrous. Da, 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 da. Because no, what we're talking about is the truth. You don't want nuance. You want an emotional, reactionary,
wag your finger,
hyperbole of a situation. You don't want any sort of nuanced discussion. You don't want any truth, and you're being fucking hypocrites. Because if it was okay then why isn't it okay now, and vice versa?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this a little bit right now too, as well, because I think we had the situation one. What's the bigger picture? What are you trying to say? When we were being criticized, and specifically you put up a Twitter video, and we had certain people come after us, certain known people, and they said, well, what you're doing is wrong, and the fact is that the YPO weren't white supremacists, and you're falsely misleading people and stuff. And here's the questions I have too as well, because it also tied into the Boogaloo interview and whatnot and everything.
Right.
It's like this whole kind of like morality police of sorts from these left neo-progressives to say that you shouldn't talk to these people whatsoever. And they were like saying like, oh no, like the YPO, they're not like racist like they're saying they are. Like, oh, Fred Hampton would never ever talk to some real white supremacist. These people would just 86 those groups. And
nobody's saying that, that Fred Hampton was uniting with that, because that's not even what I said. But people were saying that, oh, I was saying that. I didn't even say that. I was simply saying that they worked with groups that like had white supremacy, and I should have said maybe white nationalists. But right there in the article by this revolutionary socialist, they are literally saying the Confederate flag was a symbol of white supremacy. So so you see how they're moving the goalposts? Oh, no, but it was okay because that was the symbol of their heritage, and they wore it as a working class separation. But have you been to the South? Do you know how people in the South fucking live? And do you know how people in the Midwest live? A lot of those people still live under the same conditions of that the poor Southerners lived, and they are brought up under the same type of ideology and beliefs that the Confederate flag means the same thing. And so, again, you're showing your fucking hypocrisy by trying to make that, no, but that doesn't mean anything. They weren't racist by saying that. But I am saying by our metrics today, you would have thought the YPO boys were racist. You would have said, don't work with them, don't talk to them. And that's what would have been happening, because what I've seen from Magnus, only Magnus and others that I'm gonna show in a minute, is that they were defending and marching with BLM protesters, but they have the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. So they must be evil. They must be Nazis. And the mainstream media is writing all these articles. The mainstream media, let's believe the mainstream media all of a sudden. Like, this is, do you see what I'm saying here? Like, this is the hypocrisy and how far away from any sort of actual revolutionary radicalism we've come on the left.
Why is there a white savior, white knight complex from some of these people? I mean, we can obviously say that some people are kind of paid, and we don't know for a fact, but some people are paid to kind of keep the message of divisiveness going, to make sure that one side, people on the left, that is, specifically say that anybody who watches OAN or anybody who watches Newsmax or anybody who watches Fox News, they're not worth being talked to whatsoever. and then trying to compare certain people on the left. YouTubers like these people to make sure that they are just whisked away without any nuanced conversation. So there are people who are paid to keep that message going. We don't know who they are, but I feel that there are a lot of people who act this way, whether it be a form of white guilt, whether it be a form of just like thinking that you lack compassion if you're not out there fighting racism on its very, very front. Why are these people that way? What drives them to even say, like we said on our Twitter thread, where a white woman criticized a black man for saying that, oh, we should go. Pretty much the black man was saying these people who were taught racism, they weren't born being racist, they were taught. So we got to go in there, have some uncomfortable conversations to unteach them that. And then we had a white woman telling him, oh, well, we shouldn't do that politically, maybe on your own free time, but it put us other non-whites in dangers. And I was like, you're speaking to a black man and telling him. It was like what Theodore Rose told us. It's like a white Karen will call him a racist, and we don't get it. So
there's a lot of Karen.
What drives these people to act this way, to feel this way, to lash out at people who don't who don't participate in the cancel culture of people who think differently than us and talk to Boogaloo Boys or other people? What propels them, fam? Because I can't figure it out. I'm trying to think about what it is, but there's a lot of people out there, and it's like almost like the CIA has got them to act this way, to keep people divided.
I mean, I think there's an element to that for sure. I mean, like I think there's definitely white guilt. There's definitely white knighting. Definitely this idea that we're going to be the gatekeepers of what is, it's just like the Democratic Party. It's just rebranded as progressivism. The Democratic Party constantly talks about how, they care about people of color, all this. They put in warmongers of color to make you feel better. I'm sure it makes brown people abroad feel better that they're getting bombed by a black or brown, a warmonger. I'm sure, or a woman. It's different. When you get bombed by a woman and then a man, it definitely, the air is a little bit different. And so that's what they do. Progressives, they kind of take it, a little bit further, but they do the same thing. Oh, we need this intersectional and all of this. But at the end of the day, they don't look at foreign policy. They don't look at the free speech or civil liberties, and they don't look at the security state. So again, it's all part of that. Like, it's all part of feel good narratives that aren't really based on logic. They're just emotionally reactionary. You cannot have a conversation with some of these people. You can't. Like, I have tried, believe me, like, have a rational conversation. Boom. Like, it's like, they're like, stop supporting Nazis. I'm like, okay, can you please point where I'm supporting a Nazi? Blocked. Like, okay, can you stop platforming Nazis? Okay, can you stop telling us to ally with white supremacists? Can you please point out to where I said that? Crickets. Like, and then we show let's move on because we're talking a lot.
I hear. No, I mean, I like what you're saying, and I think it's an important topic to talk about, because the fact is we have been getting smeared because we said, oh, those people on the Capitol, the majority of those people were not like crazy white nationalists.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I didn't like seeing the Confederate flag at the ellipse, and I didn't like seeing the one Confederate flag out in front of the Capitol. I thought it was disrespectful. I thought it was wrong, but it's not something I would like not talk to the person about. I would say, hey, what's up with this and stuff. But for the most part, most of those people were really, but we get chastised and we get yelled at and say we're sympathizing for white nationalism because we're trying to humanize these people, and it seems to be an attempt to dehumanize these people. So therefore, they can do whatever they want, and they can maintain their control. So.
And even more than that, I'm not even trying to humanize white nationalists. I'm trying to tell you that not everybody that is a Trump supporter or that's a Republican is automatically a white nationalist. Definitely not everybody that's a libertarian. And definitely not everybody that's not a Democrat. Are you kidding me? Like, since when are Democrats any better than a white nationalist? I'm seriously asking, like, why? Because their rhetoric is better? What do they do behind the scenes? What don't they do for you? Like, stop thinking that there's a difference between these two parties, because there isn't. And in the back of these people's minds, they prefer Democrats. That's what it is. They want to reform the Democratic Party. All of these people attacking us are all Democratic Party reformists. So this
is the truth right here, fam. You're talking to Boogaloo Boys. I think that Fiorella is a crypto fascist. We're talking to Boogaloo Boys, or saying that all those people at the Capitol weren't.
So this person made up a whole thing, a whole profile that was started November 2020, and they admitted it was a burner account because I do my research, guys. Fiorella Isabel is a crypto fascist. Here it is. She's a white Latina from a majority white Republican town in Florida. How does this person know that? I don't know. That's suspect. That means she had to look it up, right? Maybe. And I'm not from there. So your research is lacking. Also, not an anto-capitalist, but a big free speech advocate, like many libertarians are. Also, being a free speech advocate is now a bad thing. Caring about Julian Assange is a bad thing now.
Like many libertarians are bad. Awful.
Free speech. Run away. Julian Assange. Crazy fascists.
Those libertarians.
These people aren't our allies. At best, they are ignorant libertarians. There it is again, spreading dangerous. She sounds like John Brennan. Dangerous misinformation. Maybe it's John Brennan. And never correcting it despite being called out. At the worst, they are paid to co-opt left movements are in fact right-wingers.
Ooh. Where's our check?
Where's
where's our check?
Trump's, from Trump.
Where's that money?
Further, right-wing militias like the Boogaloo Boys are middle class.
They are, huh?
They aren't poor, disenfranchised workers. Not the guy we talked to. They are pro-business, anti-government, pro-capitalist. Okay, they might be pro-business and they are anti-government. And they might be pro-capitalist, some of them, not all of them. Some of are anarcho communists like myself. This is what's his face? Magnus said to us. Okay, so then so that was that person who's literally, if you go on their Twitter profile, it's literally me, Brianna Joy Gray, Glenn Greenwald, everybody that is actually speaking truth is who she hates. Then there's Sam Cedar, right? Okay, and you guys, Niko did a really great presentation. I'm not really going to get into this because I don't want to give him more air. But
he's so boring too.
He used the angry black woman trope on Brianna Joy Gray, okay? He literally is using this trope. This is a time where I get to throw the identity politics, the real racism some of these white progressives espouse. And Niko knows what I'm talking about. He said, to recap, I was yelled at for 3 hours for thinking that the leader of Force the Vote, Jimmy Dore, saying AOC is the reason we don't have Medicare for all, was unhelpful. And in that very moment, he was praising an armed right-wing militiaman who wants to destroy the government.
Ooh.
But
Magnus, we caught you. You want to destroy the government.
And he did hashtag pod fraud. Okay, so first of all,
what is pod fraud?
Nobody yelled at. That's his new hashtag of Jimmy Dore. And all these podcasters that are frauds. That's his little thing.
Oh, wow. You're cool.
Oh, here it is. I just got to read this quick. Neo shitlib corporate shill, because this is what people call him, so he's mocking himself.
Yeah.
Brianna Joy Grift, there we go with that word, was cringe that entire debate. I think she almost cried at one point. Jimmy Dore is a Richard Spencer libertarian. So now a libertarian is the same as Richard Spencer. And you know what? I'm not a huge fan of libertarians on the right at all. Because, that Ayn Rand ideology, I've never been a huge fan. Yeah, you said it yourself.
I'm not a fiscal libertarian, but the libertarian leftists of them making sure that our civil liberties, our elections are clean, and ending these regime change wars, being non-interventionist, is something that really should be embodied, embraced by the left, by true progressives and stuff, but it's not. And you know what I'm saying? They just want to say Medicare for all, Green New Deal. Who cares about foreign policy? Who cares about we have to take people down? They have an authoritarian streak in them.
They do.
And that's why the libertarian comes into place. They're anti-authoritarian.
And so he talked about, so he basically used that trope. Brianna Joy Gray yelled at him for 3 hours. No, she didn't. She didn't yell at him for 3 hours. She was fine and very, very polite. She's one of the most polite people that has a way of putting things that I've ever seen. It's like, she literally just yelled for like 30 seconds, not even, because
just
he kept bringing up Jimmy Dore.
Yeah.
He kept bringing up Jimmy Dore. This isn't about Jimmy Dore. He kept bringing up Jimmy Dore. This isn't about Jimmy Dore. And there he is.
Jimmy.
Thank you, Gloria Jones, for that meme. She's a meme queen. Okay, so then this person said, socialist boomer.
Oh my God.
Get over yourself. Get yourself someone who looks at you like Jimmy Dore looks at white supremacists. Okay, so Jimmy Dore isn't even looking at Tucker Carlson.
Look at a camera.
But yeah. So okay, so if that's your criticism, Jimmy Dore is looking at the fucking camera. Can you bring me a little bit more that shows you that Jimmy Dore is a right wing, Richard Spencer loving nationalist, white nationalist?
Yeah,
like,
but and it also
ridiculous.
to call Tucker a white supremacist is going pretty far. I mean, he's got a lot of conservative views that we don't like when he talks about immigration and certain other
Some of the shit he has say, I would say, is racist.
White supremacists.
But that's the thing. We can discuss that.
We keep drawing the line and until everybody who says anything.
Look, I don't like Tucker Carlson, but the fact that he gives a platform to leftists like Anya Perrenpal, Max Blumenthal, Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, etc.,
Yeah.
it's
There's
a
also
good
this
thing.
movement from the left of people to excuse the Joe Bidens and all these other people, and just saying they're not fascist, they're imperialist, they're authoritarian, but they're not fascist. You know what I'm saying?
Right, Joe
Tucker
Biden,
Carlson,
yeah.
even though he puts on anti-imperialist on his show from the left, you know, the Glenn Greenwalds, the Anya Parampels, the Jimmy Dores, and you know what I'm saying, people who are against war, it doesn't make a difference because he's a fascist. He might be anti-imperialist, but he's a fascist. I mean, they've really been trying to conflate those two issues and saying, like, even that socialist said, oh, well, Biden's not a fascist, he's an authoritarian imperialist.
No.
Hello?
No. If you're going to say Trump, if by your definition Trump is a fascist, Biden is even more of a fascist.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, I had people arguing that the Confederate flags were okay just because it was their historical revisionist theory, and it would be a right-wing talking point today to say that the Confederate flag is okay because of historical context. So I wanted to show more on the Boogaloo Boys because we got a lot of flack for even interviewing Magnus, and I knew we would. I knew the moment we were diving into this sort of not everybody is a fascist, rational, logical thinking, I knew we would be attacked because the logical, rational people get attacked by emotional, hyperbolic liberals, and that's just what happens on the left. It happens too on the right, and it happens too on the right. Like if too, yeah. But it's a lot of it is happening to us on the left because we are leftists and we are diverging from the current status quo progressive narrative, right? So here's a couple pictures of the Boogaloo Boys. This is from Ford Fisher. He had a giant thread on this. The heavily armed coalition of activists, including right-wingers, Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys, a self-proclaimed new Black Panther, and militia groups converge for a rally against laws mandating people wear masks for COVID spread prevention. Isn't this crazy?
Yeah.
Against laws mandating people wear masks for COVID spread prevention. Did you guys hear about this? I mean, did you hear that there's a coalition for, I get, literally, it's strange. But, and some of these people might be at odds with each other, but this is really weird. Why would people be against a law mandating people wear masks? Well, because it's one thing to say you should wear a mask and people wear it. It's a whole other thing to tell people that you have to do it. So when you tell people you have to do something, they're going to get a little pissy about it. And yeah, there's just some pictures. I'm not going to read the whole thing for the sake of time. But
you got coalition of leftists, including Black Lives Matter and Antifa, showed up to a counter demonstration.
Police formed a line between the two sides.
So,
you can see that. And then I'll dive into this more video in the thread. But when police split right-wingers from leftists, the Boogaloo Boys largely stood in the middle or on the leftist side. Some right-wingers condemned them as siding with the left.
So they got a lot of flack from the right for siding with the left many times. This is, of course, correlates what Magnus was telling us, that they're hated by everybody. And here we go down lower, Johnny. Some leftists were not fond of the Boogaloo people. This sign and T-shirt were specifically cited by Antifa as evidence that the Boogaloo and people were originally willing to stand on the same side as this guy, who was part of the original anti-mask rally. So they're saying that this guy is this is reminiscent of the Boogaloo people standing on his side. You can see conflicting elements here. To be clear, by the way, the left had their own firearms as well, while certainly less. I don't want to discount that element at the event. As those who follow politics outside the R's and D's, leftists, not liberals, not Democrats, leftists tend to be pro-gun. It's true, leftists tend to be pro-gun. Afterwards, the Antifa side held a sort of victory rally because the right-wingers dispersed before they did. Some Boogaloo guys joined them to protect it. This was appreciated by some Antifa, but others told the Boogs that they aren't welcome. So, okay, that was one element of that. He also spoke to a militia group of the 3% Ohio Patriots. These people are the ones that have also mixed reviews. He said he's here to protect the rally. I asked him how he feels about armed Black Panther groups here, and he says, we're all good with it. We're all on the same side in the end. So that's very interesting.
Is there a little video of this guy? Can we hear him?
Yeah, we're just out here to support the people. They want their city back. They want stuff to go away, and we're here to protect them while they're doing that. This is a bunch of Patriots. We're the Ohio Patriots. A bunch of other Patriot organizations joined us, along with the Proud Boys. We're just here to make sure everybody's safe, everybody's happy. There's going to be a lot of good speakers today, so we're just here to do what we said we'd do.
I noticed there were some armed Black Panther, actually, people out here. There's a Black Panther t-shirt and a guy wearing 3 guns. What do you think of people from other kinds of groups like that coming out here armed?
As long as they believe in our constitutional a republic, I'm all good. Yeah, we all come together. You know, it's a Second Amendment right. You know, we can't say one can do it and the other one can't.
Right.
So, yeah, we're all good with it. We've never had any problem with them. So, figure it'll stay that way because we're all on the same side in the end.
Okay, so, you know, when I hear 3%ers, this is not what I usually think. I think an actual white supremacist, all of this stuff. And now I'm seeing videos of this guy saying this. Now, he may have different beliefs. He may be lying. I don't know. But what I am seeing here is he's saying, yeah, I'm fine because it's part of the law that applies to everybody, right? All right. Okay, so this man wearing 3 handguns spoke to the anti-mask folks. He encouraged unity despite noting that he may have supported Obama, while people in the crowd largely supported Trump. He says the only one that's bothering us is the government for COVID-era restrictions to work. Let's hear what he had to say. No.
We're all out here for common goal because we all want justice. We all want liberty. We all want to live in a better place. Can y'all hear me good? You know, and I want to break some false perceptions about my group. I'm the leader of the Black Panthers in Columbus, Ohio. And some people believe that we're a hate group and we only love black people, and that's not true. I got white members, I got Latino members. That's right. I got women. I have some people that are gay because we're all American. We're American. And if you're an American, you got the right to be whatever you want to be, however you want to be, as long as you're not bothering nobody. But it seems as if right now in America, the only one that's bothering us is the government. They done gave a whole bunch of grown folks a curfew. They done told us when we can go to work. They done affected how we can provide for our children. And that's the most thing that matters the most, is our children. We can't provide for them the right way. And what we need to do is get past the groups, get past religion, get past politics, and see that it's other people that are trying to survive. Other people that want to live in peace. But we got to learn how to have compassion for each other. Understand it, because we come from 2 different walks of life. We was taught 2 different things. And it's so, and when you're so stuck, and what you were taught, you're growing up with, and sometimes it's hard to blend with the community. And what we got to do is start blending black with white, yellow with brown. We all got to come together. Even though you might like Trump, I may have liked Obama. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that I don't have the right to live. Doesn't mean that you ain't got the right to wave your flag. You said you can feel however way you want to feel, but we got to learn to love each other. If you believe in God, and I'm pretty sure most of y'all look like godly people out here, the greatest law that Jesus taught was love. And that's the thing we forgot. We looked for every other solution on how to fix America. We're trying to figure, maybe we go to politics and we vote for this person, or maybe we protest. But it'll all stop and it'll all change if we start loving people that are hard to love, and not loving the person that's standing next to you. That's not what Jesus taught you. He said you gotta love the people that you don't know. That's the real challenge. Yeah.
All right, and so there's a lot more, of his documentation. Yeah, God. Okay, so Jonny, if you scroll down to this video, it says, regardless of the larger national going on, you guys stood with us today. That part, it's a video with a woman with her flag on her mouth.
It says, "Thank you, brother," replied the Boogalooer. Boogalooer right there.
That one.
The Boogalooer.
Also, can I just say thank you for everyone who's actually coming over here and trying to ask us questions, communicate, get past the barriers. We know there's been a lot of walls put up. We're trying to break them. We've heard that people,
like I said too, man, Anonymous kind of got trashed because they kind of part of them went with the Alex Jones route, right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
we saw some of that going. A lot of us work closely with Anonymous. Obviously, Anonymous is all kinds of different chapters and sects.
Right.
Some are with us, some are against us. Right. But usually, the more they learn about us, the more they come to our side, because they know we're fighting for the people.
A lot of the misunderstanding is just lack of information, because we have we do have a bad media presence, but that's completely unwarranted, because this is my probably 4th or 5th BLM march this year. This is last year. Well, I mean, I'm glad you guys are here. I'm an anarchist. Okay. I'm part of
welcome you.
I'm part of Antifa.
A lot of us are ANCAPs, and I know.
100%. So, I just want you guys to know, regardless, I think it's
actions that speak for people.
For sure. That's why we're here.
You guys stood with us today.
For sure. And I will stand with you again.
And I think we also just have to say, regardless of the larger national thing, man, you guys stood with us today, and that deserves props. Thank you, brother.
Okay, guys. So just real quick, I just want to interject, and Johnny, I don't know if you want to like have any opinion on this. You guys have never seen this. I did some research. This is what people want to pretend doesn't exist. I'm not making shit up. I'm showing you videos of these people interacting and having conversations. There is nothing on mainstream media that talks about this at all. Nothing.
Because this is the worst nightmare. Antifa, BLM, Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys, all of them coming together saying, "Yo, hey, wait 1 second." You know, the dude with the bullhorn talking to those Trump people, and a lot of people, they just had their hands behind their back. They were looking, they were listening, they were engaged, and they were seeing Black Lives Matter in a different light that day than they'd ever seen before. What's put on the mainstream media and what they're told. You know, so they were like, "Wait a second, wow!" And then this Black Panther is saying, "Hey, man, you might have liked Trump, I might have liked Obama. It doesn't make a difference. All it makes a difference is that we understand that we're the same people here, that we're on the same side." And the government is oppressing us now,
right.
Telling us we can't provide for our children, your children and my children. We can't provide for our children. And it is their worst nightmare to see people come together. This is so impactful. And it's just so weird to see how we've been attacked and what we've been attacked over. You know what I'm saying? What we've been attacked
Johnny,
over. It's crazy. So.
How do you feel about this?
Yeah, John.
I want to go on the ground.
Yeah.
Johnny wants to get on the ground.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Talk to some people. And I want to find the Black Panthers group. I know there was one in Atlanta. That guy said they were from Columbus, Ohio. So we're gonna have to take some trips, fams.
Yeah. Because this is what we're talking about here. And I heard some conversations when we were in Portland, but nothing to this depth, this point. And as we know, we're constantly getting attacked. And by the way, please go to that thread. It's Ford Fisher, who is a journalist that was documenting the protests as well. I have reached out to him. I have asked him to come on and talk about his experience as well. I hope he comes on because I would love to hear more of his experience on the ground. Our experience, like we said, we knew the Boogaloo Boys. My perception of them shifted completely. I thought initially they were just a typical, white nationalist group initially. And I can admit and say, no, they weren't. I learned that that's not the case. And I'm willing to change my perception based on new information. Why can't people do the same? So just a couple of other pictures, because we're running out of time.
Kizzy503 on the tweets.
Yeah, this is just a group of armed Boogaloo Boys who actually were able to gather beneath the I-35. This is near the Austin. They were right below the Austin Police Department headquarters, and they said that they were there to protect the freedom of speech of protesters. Yeah. And he updated the tweet saying they are working in tandem with BLM protest. It's a protest group named We Take the Streets, photo attached. So this is the Boogaloo Boys. You can recognize them obviously with their Hawaiian shirts. And they're right next to the radical Antifa. Or BLM, right? So that's pictures that was sent to me by somebody.
And you better believe, I bet you the ups at BLM are probably saying don't work with Antifa, like the people at the national level, maybe. Or you think that? Can we get any reports on anybody from the national level what they've said about as far as BLM and Boogaloo Boys working together, or anybody who's in BLM local and their thoughts about working with the Boogaloo Boys? I'd also like to hear from you out there and let us know what you think and stuff, because as we're showing this whatnot. Let's actually hear members. We talked to a Boogaloo member. Let's talk to some members of BLM. Johnny, maybe you can reach out to some of your contacts as well and see how they honestly feel about that right now, because I'm very curious to see how they feel.
Yeah, same. And like I said, I've asked, to talk to some of the BLM supporters who have worked with the Boogaloo Boys because I want to hear their side as well. Okay, so this person was, talking about Magnus. It's so stupidly obvious with the rainbow flag and BLM sweatshirt. Who would fall for this? And this person, Spencer Howard, said, "What do you mean, fall for? Boogaloo Boys have been marching with BLM all summer to protect them from police. These guys are counter-protests, protesting magtards." And then here it is. At least 200 people, the majority proudly toting rifles, semi-automatic weapons, and other firearms, gathered outside Capitol Square to protest against gun control and the violation of constitutional rights. The rally, organized by activist group Virginia Knights, also served as a memorial for Duncan Lemp, a 21-year-old man who was fatally shot in his Maryland home in March during a no-knock police raid. And there it is, united. Armed Black Lives Matter groups and right-wing activists. And see, I wouldn't even call them right-wingers. Came together at a Richmond rally on a Saturday in support of the Second Amendment.
They're more libertarians.
Yeah, being for pro-Second Amendment doesn't make you a right-winger. Just for future reference, because I'm pro-Second Amendment and I'm sure as hell not a right-winger. I mean, and then...
Me too.
So, yeah. Okay, so this is their big luau is coming. Protect all peaceful protesters at all costs. This is on June 2nd, 2020, and it has BLM. This is no longer about race, it's about control. Welcome to the Boogaloo Boys. We watch the martial law like hawks. As Magnus described yesterday, they believe that a civil war is coming because of the dividing, and they want to stop it. So what is a Boogaloo? And they've made this pamphlet and this flyer, and Magnus has shared it too. What is a Boogaloo movement and values? What does a movement not like? What kind of people are a part of it? Has an American flag. And then it has the term Boogaloo is an inherent or an internet reference to a possible civil war being brought by the discontent with the current two-party system that is too busy fighting amongst themselves to pass laws that actually change anything. I agree. Increase taxes. I mean, I agree. We're not getting our taxes used for the right things. Legislation that erodes the Constitution away. True. Uncontrolled illegal immigration and benefits for them. See, this is a part where I disagree with them, and this is a part where I think we could have a conversation of what do you mean by that? Can you specify what is the problem of immigration? It more or less comes down to economics. Like, we don't have enough for us, so why are we letting these people in? Well, we need to talk about foreign policy then. We need to talk about imperialism.
Exactly, because that's the kind of thing is that at least when Magnus talks is like, we're against anti-imperialist, we're anti-imperialist against us going around bombing brown people all over the countries and against ICE. So, I mean, it's kind of
it's a broad thing. And so what I'm saying is, I'm not saying I'm okay with that. But I am saying I would, if I don't talk to these people, how am I going to be like, well, what about imperialism? What about this? And what about that? Nothing gets said or disproven in any way, shape, or form. Outrageous and unnecessary spending of tax dollars, militarization and brutality of police, biases, lies, and misleading of the mainstream media, prisons overflowing with nonviolent offenders, endless expensive wars that in no way benefit the people, a hopeless war on drugs, the elitism and disconnect of the career politicians who are only interested in serving their own agendas, not the will of the people they fail to represent. This isn't a movement that grew overnight, but rather the buildup of decades of legislature, corruption, lies, and persecution that has forced people to declare that enough was enough, and this is where the government overreach will end and hopefully start to retract. And then he says, everyone should have unrestricted free speech. All firearms laws are infringent and must be repealed. The surveillance state that has increased since 9/11 must end. And the people's right to privacy and protection from unreasonable search and seizure must be restored. Reform of the judicial system is needed to remove outdated laws, regulations, and ensure trials are fair and impartial across the board. Illegal immigration must be dealt with, and the benefits granted to them must end. I disagree with that. Government spending must be curbed and taxes decreased drastically. The size of the government must be decreased significantly and must remain. This is the libertarian part. At least intrusive in people's lives as possible. I do agree with that, but we need some social safety nets, term limits for all political officials, agree, decriminalization of drugs, the return of troops overseas, and closing down of our foreign bases. I agree with everything except the lack of social safety nets and the immigration issue, which as an immigrant, as somebody that's been impacted by U.S. imperialism, I could definitely have a conversation with somebody. If I'm willing to have a conversation with somebody that is saying that we need to stop illegal immigration, you guys could fucking do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, that's the part where I wish they would tag on, you know what I'm saying, understanding that the migration problem has to do with our imperialism.
Yeah.
So, I mean, once again, it's like that's the whole like hypocritical part of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The establishment is the fact is that they're like, oh, you know, we want to help all the immigrants coming in here, and we want to make sure we provide them necessary means and stuff like that. And then the Republican side, we have to build a border wall, and we can't because they're taking away American jobs and they're bringing in guns and all this shit and stuff. Is both parties. How about you both stop fucking bombing these countries and stop influencing their governments to be changed to your likings for your resource extraction and initially turning the country into a hellhole, forcing people to migrate up this way. That's the biggest fail of Donald Trump is that he had the same policies in South and Central America as the Obama administration did, as the Clinton administration, as the Bush administration is like, you're causing the problems. So I'm glad the fact that they're addressing it. But once again, you have to address the fact that we have this migration problem because we caused it.
Yeah.
So I mean,
exactly, but that's something we could
yes.
sit there and have a conversation and be like, look, I agree with every single thing you said, but let's talk about immigration a little bit. What could be sensible, right? Because for me, you know, it's not going to be this. We're not going to agree on the exact same outcome, but I can literally say, well, okay, this is where your problems with immigration. Why do we have so many people coming in? Oh, it's because of the war. Okay, so can we not punish people for what we did? Like,
it's
know what
our
I mean?
responsibility.
It's our responsibility.
It's our responsibility that they're here. That people are migrating here because we had their country just torn apart.
Right. But to say that this is in any way alt-right, Nazi, white supremacists, and here it is. We are not a white supremacist group, nor Nazis, or communists, or homophobic, sexist, or religious persecutors. Darn, I'm so upset you're not a communist.
And can I also point out, too, that there are a lot of groups on the left and other countries that have that same migration issue, too, as well. Where they, you know what I'm saying? It's like they still, it's where we disagree. It's like, well, you know, you're France and you're Europe and whatnot and stuff, and you also participated in these wars in Libya, in Syria, that's making a migration come to your doorstep because you propagated war over there too as well. So you're responsible for it as well.
Of war.
Yeah.
So you got to deal with it. They also said we welcome everyone of every faith, gender, race, and orientation as long as you believe in liberty and freedom for all. In an independent land, no Nazis, no communists, no KKK. So this is, you know, and I would love to educate them on communism and talk about that communism shouldn't be next to the KKK or white supremacy Nazi sign. The reason, you know why it is? Because look how they're being treated by people who claim they're communists. Like, seriously, look how they're being treated by people who claim they're communists. Oh, you must be a Nazi. So do you not see, like, this fear-mongering is the same shit, different day. It's the same kind of mentality used to divide all of us. And as to, like, if I can do it, an immigrant person that considers themselves an anarcho-communist can go talk to these people who I mostly agree with on everything except the communism part and the immigration part. Why can't you fucking do it? Why is it such a big deal? Why do you have to malign me? To just based on that? It's ridiculous, guys. It's ridiculous. And this whole thing, we're gonna cut it up and put it out there. It's gonna piss people off, but this is literal videos and word and proof receipts showing you guys, like, obviously they're not a monolith, right? Just like no BLM movement organization, no group of ethnicities, no group of anything is a monolith. They're not a fucking monolith. So there's going to be people who differ. And he even said that there's a spectrum of people. There's people that are more like you. There's people that are more like Pasta. There's people that are more like him, whatever, and more on the right even than that. So I don't understand.
And they're anti-government overreach and what they're doing and what's happening nowadays. And if you don't see what's going on and I don't have to stand it, like, listen, let's eliminate the common enemy. That is the biggest enemy right now. And that is the control of this super predator class fucking government. Sorry, Mom, for cursing, but they are awful. They're ridiculous. They're trying to censor people. And the question to you people on the right there now that were back there when Donald Trump was saying, hey, a year for burning the flag, do you still agree with that? Think about it now. When you see these private companies now censoring, think about it now. Everything is a lot more nuanced than you make it out to be. It's not just let's paint a broad fucking picture. It's nuanced. Right. We have to think about things. We have to
stop saying
we can't be reactionary.
These radical Antifa. Let's jail them forever. Yeah. Let's bring the death penalty on them. Let's do that. Like, that's the same shit as saying let's kill these radical Nazis. Da 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 da. Like, it's the same shit. Like, obviously, I tend to agree more with one ideology over the other. That doesn't mean that I'm going to allow the dehumanization of people who disagree with you. And
that's what they want.
And not everybody, like I said, there are actual Nazis, but to compare Hitler to some people who are Trump supporters is ridiculous, dude. It's 75 million of Americans. They're all followers of Hitler. Now they're all Nazis. You think there's 75 million Nazis?
Come on. Johnny, that picture of the Boogaloo Boys, that last one. Let's get that up. Let's end the segment with that. As a Boogaloo Boys. They don't look like a white supremacist group to me right there, but maybe.
I think they were with the BL. Those are the
I think those are Boogaloo Boys there, though. No, aren't they? Or because they're wearing cool shirts. Maybe they were just Boogaloo for the day, like Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo. And let's not forget that, once again, in Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo, the Electro Rock and TKO made up and brought peace and happiness to the breakdancing world.
That's such a boomer thing.